Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Arias Franklin, an April board member and facilitator of the call today. Thank you for joining this workshop, Healthy Living and Cooking for $25 a week. I want to mention a few housekeeping items before we get started today. First, when you scroll over the screen, a menu bar pops up depending on what device you are on. You can find that menu bar at the top of or the bottom of the screen. This is where you will find the closed captioning for today's session. You can view the captioning by selecting the closed captioning tab or CC tab on the menu bar. For sign language interpreting, you can find the interpreter on the screen. If you would like to change the size of the screen, if slides are shown, you can select the line in the middle to make the slides larger or smaller. For sessions with only Spanish, your one sheeter will tell you if you have Spanish. If you have technical issues, please use the chat feature. You can find the word bubble in the same menu bar. If you would like to turn on the chat feature, if you are using a screen reader, you can do that by pressing Alt H, or please use the info and help section on the conference website for more help. For Q&A times, please note the Q&A box is on the menu bar. Please only submit questions there as they may get lost in the chat. To ask a question or make a comment, you can also select the hand option on the menu bar. That allows us to know you have a question. For those of you on the phone today or using keystrokes, we ask that you press star 9 or Alt Y on your keypad to raise your hand. We will then let you know when you can unmute. You can select the unmute option or Alt A if using keystrokes. Remember, if you join the conversation, please keep all background noise down as much as possible to allow us to hear you clearly. I would like to introduce Vicky Lieber in this presentation today for healthy cooking for $25 a week. Go ahead and take it away, Vicky.
All right. So I'm Vicki Leeper. I am from Moscow, Idaho. I work at the Disability Action Center Northwest, and I am the outreach specialist. And I'm also old enough to remember the first time there was a bout with inflation back in the 70s. And my parents as well went through the Great Depression. And so I was raised, along with my two sisters, to know how to get through tough times. My parents were Yankees, and that meant you never threw anything away. You figured out how to eliminate waste. And that led us to be raised with a buy less, and buy smarter kind of mentality. This is a good thing because I think it's like half of all Americans are overweight. And that's due to that unhealthy diet and a lack of exercise. So people who are, maybe you didn't know this, but people who are 15 pounds overweight can lose as much as 4 years off of their life. So it's kind of important to eat healthy and smarter. So today we're going to walk through how to go grocery shopping and then how to cook and feed yourself healthy meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a whole week for $25. With prices going up at the grocery store due to inflation, this is becoming even more important for people because generally your wages aren't keeping up. So for our $25 a week, we're going to feed a person for that whole week. That would be about the same amount of money going to a restaurant twice. So let's get ready to do some shopping. So you can see right here on this screen are some groceries that I bought. But I always start out teaching my kids how to grocery shop before they leave home to be on their own. And one of the first things we do is we walk through the produce aisle. And you're going to look for things in the produce section that are about $1 a pound or less. This will help you to learn to shop with what's in season, and it can save you a lot of money over a whole year. Typically, when I was growing up, we didn't have access to everything all times of the year. So it was a lot more of growing and eating what was in season. Rhubarb tended to be the first fruit of the season when I was growing up. So that can really help if you're going to shop by what's in season. Another thing to kind of remember when you're grocery shopping for produce is there's typical veggies that are always cheap. And these include cabbage, potatoes, carrots, onions, squash, and bananas. You'll also find that pastas and beans and rice, the dried kind, and tuna are inexpensive staples to have in your cupboards. When you're shopping cold cereal in the aisle, try and look at the tag that's on the edge of the shelf. It will have a by the ounce price. By using that, you can save a lot of money, because when they show a box of cereal and it's only $1.97, by the ounce, it might be 36 cents. And you're going to want to shop for things that are around 18 cents an ounce to save some money there. Another area to cut back on your grocery bill is the meat department. Americans don't need to eat a large amount of meat, especially if you're more sedentary than you should be. So by using cheaper sources of protein, eggs, milk, legumes, that would be dried beans and stuff, and fish, you can provide the same amount of protein in your menu that's about 1/20th the cost of beef. And it's better for you all the way around. Another thing to do is to shop ahead. I developed this menu plan by the week, and that's for a specific reason. I always grocery shop once a week. That cuts down on not only gas and stuff for trips to the store, but it cuts down on impulse buying when you're in the store. So try and plan once a week is when you're going to do your shopping. You have a menu, and that'll help you stick to a budget a lot better. That also gives you an opportunity when you see something on sale that you can stock up. I like to buy bread when it's on sale, and you take that bread, grab this one. So maybe I'd buy all the bread I would need in a month, and you take that packaged bread and you wrap it in the plastic grocery bag, tie it, and stick it in your freezer, and it keeps really well that way. Like this, not so much. It has to be double bagged for it to keep for that whole month in the freezer. Then when you need a new loaf, you just take one out. Another way to save money, and this comes from my Yankee background, is to eliminate waste. My dad grew Swiss chard in the garden, and Swiss chard's kind of like kale or spinach. There's leaves, and that's the part you eat. And he kept throwing away these 6-inch by 1-inch stems of the Swiss chard. And he kept thinking, well, there's got to be a way to not waste that. And he figured out that if you sliced them up in pieces and dipped them in tempura batter and deep fried them, they were really delicious. So that was another way. You just rethink what you're throwing away, and how can you reuse it or use it so you're not having to throw it away. So if you're at home and you've made some food, and you might have some little Tupperwares in your fridge with some leftovers, and maybe they sit there all week and then you throw them out. So rather than do that, consider making a soup. A soup is easy to put together. This is what they did during the Depression. You get broth. You can buy broth in the cartons or a can. It's pretty cheap, or you can just make it using bouillon and water, and that's your base to start with. And then add all those little bitty leftovers you had to the soup, and you can come up with a pretty good soup doing that. Another thing to do is save the water when you're cooking vegetables. That's full of nutrients and flavor, and you can add that to your soup broth as well. So let's go shopping. You can see right here, I have all the groceries that I've purchased. That was using this list, which is in your handout. And the list has broken things down into dollar store items and Winco items. And that's because those are two of the stores that I have access to here in Moscow. But you could also try Walmart or any kind of discount grocery store. Safeways and stuff tend to be more expensive. But I bought all of those groceries that you see on the table for $25.83. There's my receipts. And I did that last Friday. Now, some items at the dollar store, which is technically no longer a dollar store, it's $1.25, they're actually cheaper when you buy them at Winco. This can of spaghetti sauce, that would be $1.25 at the dollar store. It's $1.18 at Winco. So you want to watch things like that at the dollar store as well. Kind of price shop your different markets, and you're going to find some things are cheaper at a regular store. Another way you're saving money doing that is you're buying dried rice and beans If you buy the canned beans at dollar store, you're paying so much more because they're expensive by the pound. By buying them dried and cooking them yourself, you're going to save tons of money. There's also in your booklet that I provided a list of pantry staples. These are things that you have in your cupboard that I use to cook these meals. Salt and pepper, everybody should have that. Garlic powder, this adds a lot of flavor and is pretty cheap. Hot sauce of your choice, I have Level Up Game Over Garlic hot sauce, that's my favorite. Soy sauce, and I typically buy the less sodium one. And olive oil to cook things with. Cinnamon for our oatmeals. And brown sugar. So those are the staples you need to have on hand. It's not a whole lot. I cooked all of these meals with just that. The groceries that you see here, plus the staples. If you have a little more money in your budget, each of the recipes include a nice ad at the bottom. And that might be things like sour cream, grated cheese, chopped green onions, salsa, Italian seasoning, ranch, dipper dressing, and ketchup and mustard. Those are nice ads. Don't need them. There's a lot of flavor in all of this food, but if you've got a little more money in your budget, that's something you could do. Now, one page in your booklet looks like this. It's a weekly menu plan. So it goes Monday through Sunday, and it lists all of the meals. This you're going to post on your refrigerator so you know what's coming up and be able to, if you have to thaw something, take it out of the freezer and be ready. In the corner, it has some make ahead things that we're going to do. So Sunday, let's say we went shopping and I'm at home unpacking the groceries and I'm going to do the stuff that's on this list and be ready for the week. This is going to save you a lot of time throughout the week. The meals typically only take about 15 minutes to prepare. Pretty much anybody can find time to do that. So having the stuff pre-done on this prep day is going to save you a lot of time. So we'll get ready and go into the kitchen. So you want to move that? Now, something I like to do when I'm cooking is I kind of make it an event for myself. So I always pour myself a drink. This is apple cider in honor of fall. So I've got that. Cheers. And I might put on some soft jazz, Nora Jones or something in my kitchen because it just makes it a little more fun. I'm typically in there alone. So now we're going to prep. And on our list right here that has the weekly menu that you're posting on your fridge, it has hard-boiled 2 eggs. These are going to be for our breakfast tomorrow morning of the week. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I've got my pot. It's not very big because it's only 2 eggs. I'm going to take out 2 eggs, put them in the pot. Cover those with water. We've got a little bit of the egg sticking out, but that's okay. And I'm going to boil those, bring them to a boil. And then once it's boiling, turn it down a little bit because you don't want them bouncing around in there so much that they crack. So you turn around, keep it boiling, but not a hard boil. And you're going to set your timer for 10 minutes. And the reason for that is you don't want to overcook the eggs. Once that timer goes off, you're going to take this whole pan. You're going to go to your sink and put it in the sink and run cold water in it until the pan and the water stays cold and let it sit for a little bit. That's going to stop the cooking. That's really important. If you've ever opened a hard-boiled egg and the yolk was kind of green inside, that means you've overcooked it. You want your yolk to be a nice golden yellow, and cooking it for 10 minutes is going to get you that result. I start with cold water, you end with cold water. Now, here's a little hint. Older eggs are easier to peel than fresh eggs. So it's a great way to use up older eggs that are in your refrigerator. Boil them up and use them for lunches or breakfasts. Another way to make sure that they're easy to peel is you're going to add a ½ teaspoon of white vinegar to the water when you're boiling it, and that'll make them easier to peel as well. So little side tip. So that was that item on our make ahead. The second thing on the list is to cook the entire bag of beans, it says. So you buy your beans at the dollar store and they come in a bag. There's about a pound of beans here. You're going to cook that whole bag your first day. I like to use an Instapot. That's my friend. That will cook your beans in about 45 minutes. They'll be perfect, that entire bag. But you can do it by following the instructions that are on the back if you don't have an Instapot. You're going to soak them the night before, kind of drain out that water, refill the pot with fresh water, put it on a back burner and simmer it for a long time. It might take all day to get your beans tender, but that's another way to do it if you don't have an Instapot. So that got our beans all done. And another thing on that list that says cook half the bag of rice. So the bag of rice we bought at the dollar store, it's pretty big. I think it's 2 pounds. This is actually more rice than you will need for this whole week. You'll be able to save rice and cook it for next week and stuff. That's a lot. But I use a rice cooker. Too many meals I've made rice and it was still crunchy. So the rice cooker is my friend. I put 2 cups of rice in there to 4 cups of water, a little bit of salt, and then cook it in my rice cooker. But you could do the same thing in a pot. You just kind of have to watch it, make sure it doesn't run out of water. The instructions will be on the back of the package, but that'll only be like maybe a third of the rice that's in this package. So lots of food value there for hardly any money. So we'll go back to our prep list and it says cook lentil stew. So that's actually the first thing that we're going to cook. The lentil stew, it's the first recipe in your list of recipes. I tried to put them in the order that we use them. And lentils come in a package like this. They're really very nourishing. They're grown right here on the Palouse, so it's fun to use local ones. And they're loaded with folic acid, so they're a super good food for you. They cook pretty quickly, 25 to 30 minutes. There's a red version that doesn't have the casein on it, and those cook in about 15 minutes, so you can try different kinds of lentils. They have a very earthy flavor. That's probably the biggest complaint I get from people, is that they're kind of earthy tasting. But the best thing you can learn about lentils is if you cook them with your spices for your meal, they'll taste a lot better in the long run. So in this case, we're going to use some bouillon to add some flavor. So to make this stew taste richer, we're going to add, these are the beef patties we bought at the dollar store. We're going to add one of those. They're frozen, but that actually makes it easier to chop up. I'm going to take out one of those. And I'm going to, let me see this. Yeah, I'm going to chop it into little bits so that they'll cook fast. Kind of frozen there in the middle. Sometimes at the dollar store or even the grocery store, you can get pre-cooked burgers. They kind of have the grill marks on them. Those are great. You don't take any time in cooking, and those grill marks kind of mean they have a nice beefy flavor. So you can use a lot less beef and get the same amount of flavor from it. So I am going to turn this on. I'm going to add a little bit of my olive oil. Not a lot, just enough to keep it from sticking. Load that in there. All right. And then for this recipe, we're going to use bouillon. I got a hamburger in there, so I'm going to use beef bouillon. But you could use chicken bouillon or even vegetable bouillon if you're a vegetarian. This is a really inexpensive way to get flavor added to your food for not a lot of effort. I'm going to use 2, I believe. Yes, 2 bouillon cubes for this recipe. So once I'm feeling any heat at all, a little bit. Oh, wait. There we go. Open up my package of lentils because we're going to add 1 cup. Measure that out. When you cook with dried beans, and it'll typically tell you this on the package, you want to look for weird things. Sometimes a stick or a stone or something gets into that package. So you have to kind of pick it through, and sometimes they just don't look very good. Like there's an ucky looking one. Here on the Palouse, the way I buy them, there'll even be wheat or something mixed in. So I have to be really careful and kind of look at that. So you want to look them over to make sure there aren't any weird things in it. You might remember your grandmother doing something like that. It's not cooking. Not boding well for me. Okay, so we've got our meat going. We're going to add our lentils, 2 cups of water. So 1 cup of beans typically means 2 cups of water, like with rice. Another cup. And we're going to unwrap our bouillon. So this stew is going to make enough to feed you lunches for an entire week. And that's what's on your recipe plan or your menu plan is lentil stew for lunch. That doesn't mean you have to only have lentil stew. There's going to be some burritos, hot dogs, some other stuff that you can substitute in and out, depending on what you feel like that day. But it will package up into 7 little Tupperwares like this. I would recommend putting 5 of them in the freezer because maybe you aren't going to eat them all week and you don't want to leave them in the fridge to go bad, and keep the rest in the fridge for your first few lunches. So we added the bouillon cubes. I'm also going to add half of my package of the mixed vegetables. These are green beans, peas, corn, and carrots, but it could be just peas and carrots, whatever. So I kind of take my fingers and figure out what is about half. And I'm going to throw that in. And then wrap a twist tie or something around the package, and it goes back in your freezer. Now I'm looking at my recipe. It wants garlic powder. That's to taste. In general, I would do a couple of teaspoons. In my opinion, you can't have too much garlic. And some salt and pepper. Again, all of that's to taste. Pepper. I like fresh ground pepper. Stir that up. When it's done cooking, you're going to set this cooking until it comes to a boil. Turn it down a little bit, cover the pot, and set your timer for 30 minutes. Then you're going to add 2 cups of your rice that you cooked to add to it. Taste it. Maybe you need to add some soy sauce to taste, and it'll be ready to eat. Package it up. Move that one to that burner now. I can get this one going. It's working. It's just, I feel like it was hotter last time I did this. So those 7 lunches that you get out of this, if you're taking your own lunch with you to work or to school, you're likely to save probably at the minimum $35 a week. So it's a good thing to do to package your own lunches and save some money there. And it's healthier for you than McDonald's. So the goal of these recipes is to be healthy, and the food needs to be filling. Let's say you work in construction or something and you need a lot of calories to get going. This food is filling. You don't need that many calories. You just eat smaller portions, in which case it could probably feed 2 people for a week and not just 1. So that's everything that's on our prep ahead. The hard-boiled eggs, the entire bag of beans, half the bag of rice, the lentil stew's cooking, and then we'll divide it into 7 portions. The rest of your rice, you're going to save for later in the week. You'll cook it up fresh. Same way, use your rice cooker and cook up the other half of the bag. But now if this was Sunday, I'd be all done for today, but I'm going to keep going, and we're going to cook our dinner on Monday, which is red beans and rice. So I'm going to get to that recipe, which is the second recipe in the little booklet. I got my pan. Hopefully it'll heat up. I'm going to add a little oil to the pan. This is mostly just to keep it from sticking. So maybe a tablespoon is all you're going to need. Turn that around. Yeah.
So how many servings is that?
We made this last night for dinner, and the red beans and rice fed the two of us a really good amount for just an evening dinner. Now, if this was one person, you're going to package it up and make at least 4 good-sized burritos. So here's probably the best tip you're going to get from this workshop altogether, and that is this frozen bag of peppers and onions that you get at the dollar store. They also sell them in grocery stores. This is amazing. So you're going to take it, put it on your cutting board. It's frozen, but it's actually pretty easy to chop up frozen. I'm just going to go through and make it all uniform size pieces because then they'll cook a lot faster. And that's quite a bit. This is going to be for 2 different meals. So I'll put half of it right back into the bag and into the freezer. And if you don't like to peel or de-seed or anything on your vegetables, maybe chopping onions makes your eyes water and you cry. This is the answer. No mess, nothing to throw away. Actually, going to take that one out. How it looks. I got them all kind of like little 1/2-inch pieces. All right, I'm going to put half of that back into this bag. And then it goes right back into the freezer. You don't let it thaw out. All right, that's going to go into the freezer. This part is going to go right into the hot pan. Oh, it smells really good here. I wish you guys had smell-o-vision. I get that going and kind of get it cooking. If you use raw onions and peppers, a lot of recipes say cook till translucent. These frozen ones, they cook a lot faster. So that'll happen a lot quicker. Now I've got my pot of red beans that I made. Half of it goes into the freezer for another meal. I think Thursday of the week, you're having kind of like a refried bean quesadillas, and they are so good. So you'll save half of it for that, but we'll use this half right now. So I've got my onions going. Let's take a spoon, put my beans in. There's a kind of a thick, brothy sludge that comes with the beans when you cook them. That's got a lot of flavor. And when you need liquid for this recipe, you can add that. You can also add water, but this way you can thin it down with stuff that's got more nutrition in it than just plain water. That's quite a bit of beans. I'm going to stir that up. They cooked really well in the cooker. They're almost overdone in my Instapot. And that was at 45 minutes. But what I'm going to do here is take a fork and I'm going to mash some of them. That'll add some thickening to the whole dish. Not all of them. You don't want to mash them all. I used a potato masher on it and that kind of mashed them up too much. This is actually better. Mash them up, kind of go around the pan with the fork. Looks pretty good. All right. Now, if this looked too dry or it was cooking too fast, I might have to add some more of that liquid from the beans. But it's looking pretty good. So then we're going to add half of the rice. Remember, you divided your rice and you put some back in the freezer for a meal later in the week, but this is the part we're going to use right away. Add my cooked rice. And mix that in. Kind of break up the rice into the beans. You don't want it to be soupy because this is going to go into a burrito. But you also don't want it burning on the bottom of the pan. Pretty much all blended in there. There's a lot of nutrition in this dish for not a lot of money. We figured out for the two of us to have dinner last night with this as our meal, it was probably $1.50. That's pretty cheap. So now I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of the garlic powder. Ooh, not while the fan's blowing. Add more if you want. Stirred in. And then salt and pepper. Now it's starting to stick a little on the bottom, so I'm going to watch that it doesn't get too thick, but thick enough to make a burrito out of it. That's kind of what you want to do, is to cook off some of that extra water. And then we're going to add some hot sauce. When I made this the last time, most of the kids in the audience said it wasn't hot enough. So be generous, add what's good to your taste. Whatever hot sauce is your favorite. Sriracha is a favorite of ours too. That would work. Turn that up. I'll taste it. Definitely needs more. So a real nice add that's on the bottom of this recipe is some shredded cheese, some sour cream. We had it with some sour cream last night. It was really good. There. Pretty much that's done, and that was pretty quick. So now I'm going to take my tortillas. I have one of these. I used to have a styrofoam one, which worked fine too, but it's a tortilla heater, and you just put your tortillas in it, put it in the microwave like 30 seconds, because sometimes coming out of the fridge, they might be too stiff to fold without breaking. And that makes them nice and soft, sort of steams them in there. I've got 2 going right there. And I've got some tin foil. I'm going to put, you see this? Yeah. Some on the burrito. You can see this is a lot. To divide it into 4, I would kind of go through the pan like this and move it into 4 separate little things. But that's a lot to go in a burrito. So I think I'm just going to do this. And then roll it up. I tuck in the ends, tuck this front piece under. Ah, it's escaping. I have a weak spot. Let me try this one. Ah, this one's working better. We could roll it up like that. I'm going to take it out with tin foil. Put my rolled up burrito on that and roll it up. And there I have something that I could have for lunch. You can toss them in the freezer and store them in a Ziploc bag, all individually wrapped like this. You can take it out, set it on a plate with a paper towel, and then heat it up in the microwave, and you've got an instant lunch. And I still have all of this red beans and rice. And my stew is over here cooking away. Give that a stir. Mostly because I got to get those bouillons to dissolve up. I think it needs a little more water. Now, I didn't bring a lid, so I'm going to cover it. Foil to finish cooking. So there you have it. I've got red beans and rice ready. I've got my lentil stew. We can go through the recipes in this one by one. The breakfast burritos, it's all kind of the same thing. That's going to take the other half of your peppers and onions. And you're going to use 2 eggs and kind of mix it all up in a frying pan, a little bit of oil. Frozen sausage, I bought this kind at the dollar store. They're the little wieners, and you just chop those up and cook them in the oil and add to it. Make your burritos, same deal. You're going to fold them up, put them in tin foil, and that gives you some burritos for the rest of the week as well. And you can eat 2 for that morning. A nice add is the shredded cheese. The pasta and sauce, that's just the sauce from the can. You're going to cook up your favorite kind of pasta. I bought egg noodles and use the other beef patty for that. That's a lot of pasta and sauce. You can add, I think I've got on that one some onion. Yeah, some chopped onion and a bouillon cube for added flavor, garlic powder, and divide that into 2 because you're going to have the pasta, I think, on Friday night. And it'll already be cooked. So that dinner's all ready to go. The breakfast oatmeal. So let's try some breakfast oatmeal. That one off. Turn this down a bit. So I got a tub of the quick oats. Oop, I haven't opened this one yet. Now I'm going to take a half a cup of the oats. This is a half a cup, yeah. Put it in a bowl. I'm going to add 1 cup of water to it. Stir that up. You use kind of a big bowl here, if you can see that. Don't want your bowl to be too small. And I'm going to add some cinnamon. Some brown sugar. Two teaspoons of that. 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. And then you're going to microwave it for 2 minutes. I sometimes break that up because I don't want it to bubble over in the microwave. Once that's all stirred, microwave that for 2 minutes, then you wait for another 2 minutes and it'll thicken and be ready to eat. And to kind of break up having oatmeal, you've got a banana you can chop up and add to your oatmeal. You have an apple you can chop up and add to your oatmeal. Use about half of it. And the dollar store will sell frozen fruit. And that's a great way to add a little more nutrition. I bought blueberries, but they have strawberries, they have mixed berries, and you could just spoon some of that on top of your oatmeal as well. Going back to our list, the stir-fried dinner, that's what you were going to use some of that leftover rice because we cooked enough for 2 meals. Half of it went into our red beans and rice. Well, I guess 3 meals. Half went into this, part went into the I'm going to add it to the stew, and then you're going to make a stir fry dinner with that. Now, refried bean quesadillas, that's those same beans cooked up in the pan, only you're going to mash them a whole lot more. And you might have to keep adding liquid, whether you use up all the liquid from cooking them or you use water to keep them till you get them not real smooth, but pretty good. You're going to flavor it with the garlic powder and some salt and pepper and some of your hot sauce, and then put it on your tortilla flat. And then you're going to cook the with 2 tortillas like a sandwich, cook it in the oil in the skillet on both sides, and then cut that up and eat it with ranch dip is my favorite way, or hot sauce or salsa. Fried rice dinner, that's some more of those eggs that we bought, 3 of the eggs. 1 dozen will go for your whole week. And you're going to cook it that other bag, half a bag of rice, and add that to it along with the other half of your frozen peas and carrots. So you got 2 meals out of that bag. A bouillon cube, throw in a few of your red beans if you've got some left over, some soy sauce, and that makes a really good dinner, just cooked up in the skillet. All of these meals, like I say, other than cooking the beans and the rice and the lentils, they cook up in about 15 minutes. Eggy rice is another way of this, what do they call that? Egg fried rice, I think, in a restaurant. So you can cook that in a skillet and have it for breakfast. So it's just some more of your rice and another 2 eggs. And that's really nice if you can add some sliced green onions on top of that. And at the end of the week, we've got a dinner of hot dogs. Obviously, an entire package of hot dogs is more than would feed 1 person. So you could be using some of these for your lunches, or you could have people over. And you're going to take half of your onion that you have left and grill them, slice them up, and not grill them, but slice them up and stir them up in the saute pan with the oil, and then put that on top. Then you don't even need any ketchup and mustard. The onions make them a really good hot dog. I got the buns there to go as well. Now, are there any questions?
There's one question, Vicky, and it comes from Andy, and he said, or an anonymous attendee. Sorry about that. It says, are there any tips for making these recipes low sodium?
Well, first off, you buy low sodium soy sauce. I would kick up the garlic powder. You can add onion powder as well, and then just eliminate the salt. And you don't even have to salt the rice and the beans when you're cooking them in the Instapot and the rice cooker. You can leave the salt out. The bouillon, I don't know how much sodium's in that. It says it's 1,000 milligrams or 43% of your daily value. You could cut back on that. Check when you're shopping. Maybe there's some low sodium bouillons you can buy. My favorite one is Better Than Bouillon, I think is its brand name. Comes in chicken, beef, and vegetable. And I use it for just about everything. It's an awesome product to cook with, but I haven't looked to see what their sodium level was as well. But that's an easy way to cut back on that. Oh my.
There are no more questions right now, but there are some comments in the chat.
All right. Do I need to open it? Or will
no,
you
I can see the chat. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I think I was on mute. I'm sorry. Somebody said they're not nice that there are Instapot recipes. Someone said, I can't wait to try these recipes on my own. Sasha says these recipes sound so delicious. I can't wait to try them. I love to cook, so this is very helpful to add to my cooking tips. Thank you. This was also from Sasha. And then also too, as a reminder, you can, for people who need have accessibility or issues with cutting, such as myself, you can also buy pre-cut vegetables. They will be fresh and not frozen.
Where are
And
those?
then
Are they in
go ahead.
Are they in the produce aisle? I've never seen them, and I would love to know where they're at.
Yeah, in some supermarkets like Rosar's, they do have them. They're
Okay.
usually pre-cut and they're in the rubber bands.
Okay.
And then also I was gonna say I noticed you had held up the wieners or the sausages earlier,
Yeah.
and I was wondering if you don't have them in a resealable package, what's another way that you can reseal them to store them if you don't use all of it?
I use Ziploc bags for just about everything. Most things do better if they're double bagged. But hot dogs, maybe I'm only going to eat 2 at a time because I live alone or something. So you'd put 2 in one Ziploc bag, kind of roll it, and drop it in a big Ziploc bag, and do the same with the rest of them. And that way you can store them. The buns don't work well that way. You get what, 8 in a package. And once they're thawed out of your freezer or you brought them home from the store, it's harder to wrap those individually. But you could try it, putting a couple buns in a Ziploc and then putting that inside of a grocery bag. The thing with the plastic grocery bags, there's air that surrounds the plastic bag of the bread, and that really makes them last longer. I think I'm ready to add the rice to the lentil stew.
Okay, then real quick, Vicky, we have another question from Becky Clark, who's asking about the breakfast burritos.
Uh-huh.
They said, she said this makes 4, correct?
Yeah, easy for, like, they're big. Now the wraps that you get at the dollar store are really nice. They're actually really fresh and I really like using them, but they're not that big around. So if you use a bigger wrap, then maybe it wouldn't make 4, but this is the size I typically use. I don't know, what are those? 8 inches
Okay,
across.
then we did have some hands up, but they went down, so I will go back on mute until they come up again. We have no questions currently in the chat. Still the same. As they come in, will hold them to the actual end.
Idea about hot dog ones, you could separate them after you buy them from the store.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He was saying that taking the buns and separate them. I would just remember bread, double bag the bread. It just lasts so much better, especially if the freezer you're using is the one over your fridge, because it tends to defrost, and that's what ruins bread in a freezer, is that defrost cycle. So I'm stirring the rice into the lentil stew now that my lentils are cooked. I'm gonna add a little more water. And again, this makes a lot. So 7 good sized lunches there. You just heat them up in the microwave. You're not sure you're going to eat them all week long, then you're going to want to put some in the freezer. But these, the Tupperwares I have freeze really well. Actually, I want to taste that first. I might want to add the soy sauce. Yeah, I think I do. That's about 2 tablespoons, I think I put in there. Okay, now I'll put it in my Tupperware, package these up and save them for later. That if you have to make your lunch before you walk out the door in the morning, it's probably not going to happen. But by doing this for the whole week, they're ready to go. You just grab one and go to work or to school. That's easier to do. Is there another question?
Yep, there is, and then there's some comments in the chat. We'll go to the question first.
Okay.
Question comes from Andy. They say, do you have a dessert recipe?
I did not include desserts on this menu. But one of my favorites, and this was my kids' favorites. Okay, so you buy, instead of buying 1 banana, let's say you bought 6 bananas. and you're getting to the end of the week and 2 of them are really black and nasty and you don't want to eat them. And it's a real simple recipe for muffins. If you make them in the little mini muffin pan, then they're sort of snack size. And I always add chocolate chips to it. So it's sort of like banana bread, but way faster to cook. If you've cooked banana bread, that takes 40 minutes to an hour in the oven. And a muffin takes 13 minutes. A mini muffin takes 8. So it's faster and they're really nutritious, especially if you swap out some of the flour for whole wheat flour. I never use all whole wheat flour. I don't find it bakes as well, but you could substitute about 1/3 of it. And then you could use up those bananas and have a lovely dessert, especially warmed up with some vanilla ice cream on top.
I'm gonna go to the chat right
Okay.
now. Becky Clark says, thank you for answering her question about the burritos. Patricia McGinnis says, I use Ziploc bags also, doing a lot more cooking since the pandemic. I have learned that the meat department will cut up meat for you. And here in North Carolina, a lot of times they have fresh peppers and onions cut up and packaged there as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for those.
Taisha says, I need this lesson to learn how to cook, so I'm glad to watch this session. And that's it for the chat. We have no questions, no hands up.
So when the pandemic hit at home and we were doing that 6 weeks of working from home, I found the hardest thing was finding the line of demarcation when work stops and home life starts, because you're in your house this entire time. And for me, that line of demarcation was making dinner. So again, I'd pour myself my drink. Today it's apple cider, turn on the music, go into the kitchen. And I really got into cooking the dinners and stuff that during that pandemic, more than I ever had before. And I like to cook, but more than I ever had before. And it made the difference for me to feel in control, because that whole pandemic, you just felt like you were out of control. Everything was out of your control. You had no say in anything. You're having to stay home, not go anywhere. And it was just really hard. So the cooking became a really big deal for me to stay connected with home life and not work all the time. So I know we got done early, but that's about all I have. I think my stew's all finished.
I know you haven't even hit the 5-minute mark just yet. But I have a question though.
Okay.
What are some, I know for me, I can't stand it all. So when I cook, I have to find various ways or different ways to, work. So what are some ways that you can not modify, but just make it accessible to cook for people who may have mobility issues or deal with chronic pain?
Right here, I would say one of these little portable cooktops, because this is lower than I like to cook. I'm at a table and I normally have really high counters in my kitchen and my stove is level with the counters. But if that height doesn't work because you're sitting down, you're going to want a table and just set up your cooktop on that instead. It's lower than the stove top would be, and that's going to help you out. And then this is the cutting boards that are in my kitchen, and they come out and I can move them around. I serve charcuterie boards on them, all kinds of stuff, because they can move to a tabletop and you could do some of the cooking there. And that's where I just have this filled with water ahead of time, so it saves you even going to the sink.
Okay, we got one hand up, and that's from Molly Palestrini. So whenever you're ready, Molly.
Hey, Arius. Hey, Vicki.
Hey, Molly.
So recently I've come upon some mobility issues myself, but I've always been a cut corners kind of gal that loves to cook. So I also developed the same routine Vicki had during the pandemic, only I gained 35 pounds.
I did too. I gained weight, that's for sure.
Arius, there's this, it's a spin cutter, which I have found to be phenomenal because I also have arm problems, that you just put whatever you want to put in your meal, for your vegetables, your onions, whatever, and you pull the string twice, they're all chopped.
Oh, I have not seen this device. Now, what did you call it?
It's a spin chopper, or
Spin
I
chopper.
can actually send you what it is. I'll send you a
Ooh.
picture. But another thing, Arius, is I moved myself to the dining room table to get everything I needed together to cook my meals because I cannot stand up to do all that stuff to put it all together to get it to the stove or the oven. I also, well, kind of addicted here. I have 3 different air fryers, but I have found that using an air fryer not only cuts down on the time of your cooking, you can make it more individualized. And it's just easy. You can just put like a piece of meat, potato in the air fryer, close it up, cook it. When it's done, it's done.
I
So,
do not have an air fryer. It's one device I haven't tried yet, but my
oh my
son
goodness.
did.
I haven't used my oven in probably, well, since last Christmas. That's the only time we use the oven, is to keep things warm while we're making other stuff. I don't use my oven. So
And that you can set on a table too, because it's not any
Yes.
bigger than an Instapot.
yes, you can. So those are some of the things I do, and I will try to send that
Spin chopper.
spin chopper out. I won't be able to do it right here in the next 5 minutes because I have to look for it on Amazon and my purchased items. But I will send it to Vicky area since I don't have your new email address yet, or do I?
No, you don't have it just yet.
Okay.
Thank you, Molly.
We will, I will save it for you, or like I said, I can send it to Vicky or Mark. Don't afford it to you because it changed my life. It did. I've loved cooking my whole life, and when things started going downhill, that's what hit me the hardest. So, you would think because I'm a person with a disability who works with folks with disability, I would know all this stuff. But instead,
you.
I've had to discover it on my own by, just trying and do that stuff. So I will try to share any information with anybody to try out certain items.
Molly, this is Rachel. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you send me the link to the tool, I will add it to the materials list that's on this conference session page so everybody can check it out.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that.
And then also, Vicky, we're coming up on our 5-minute warning. I just wanted to read some comments in the chat really quickly.
Okay.
So bear with me as I scroll up because they're coming in hot. Let's see. Sasha says that dessert idea sounds really good. I'm going to definitely try it, especially since I don't know what to do with our bananas we buy when they start to get black spots on them. Joan LaBelle said, I'm getting an Instapot. You sold me on cooking the beans. It also does rice.
It does the rice too, but in this case, I had to cook them both at the same time last night to prep them. So I used both, but it does rice, it does quinoa, it does barley, your best steel cut oats for breakfast. I mean, I love the Instapot.
It also, Patricia McGinnis says, I learned to use Instapot because of the pandemic. So much less dishes to wash when I use it. Jordan Hayes, she said, I'm glad to hear the accessibility suggestions. The Instapot is my best friend in the kitchen, and I just may have to get an air fryer and spin chopper next. And that's it for the comments. And Amanda says, thank you.
Thank you guys you wish you could have smelled the smells. It smells pretty good in here. Everybody in our office will now have red beans and rice for lunch.
Everybody's just kind of giving the heart emojis right now to you.
Thank you.
And then Becky Clark says, I love the accessibility suggestions. Also, I have a few consumers that are chair users. we ordered tables that are adjustable.
Ooh,
Andy
yeah.
says, thank you so much for sharing your amazing recipes. You're getting clapping emoji, heart emojis.
Thank you.
So,
And I'm gonna give a
and
thank
then
you to my tech guy. James is running the camera that's over the food. So thank you to James.
And then also, you guys, last minute, don't forget to fill out your evaluations for today. Those are really important to us. Let us know who you want to bring back next for next year's conference. So don't forget to fill those out immediately after those sessions.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody.